Good morning, Ceann Corla, and I welcome the opportunity of contributing to the debate, which I believe is probably the most serious debate that we're having in this House so far this year and last year. Since June of 2012, my part of the country has been absolutely battered. And within 1 month of the crisis starting in June, I raised the issue on leaders' questions on the 12th of July, and it was almost dismissed out of hand. And unfortunately, not only did the weather not improve, but it got worse right through the summer. In August of 2012, I asked that as I did in July, that inspections would not be carried out in the same harsh regime. And in October, November of 2012, the Department of Agriculture officials went into land that was not travelable since May of 2012 and penalised farmers 100% of their premiums, reps, single farm payment, and disadvantaged because there was no rushes cut in it. The only way that you could travel land in Western Duhallow from July of 2012 until to date was by helicopter. There is one farmer in Western Duhallow who baled silage the last week of June of 2012, and he brought it out during the dry second half of March. That's when he got the bales out of the field, not to the cattle, into the yard. And the department were penalising. We had the coldest March on record, and it was clearly evident from if we were banking on a good March for the weather, and every farmer, as a practising farmer myself, and some of your the Fianna Fáil backbenchers said last night that we would be hoping that the crisis would continue. I can guarantee you, when I left out my cattle for the first time on Monday, I was saying it, that I sincerely hope that they won't be reverting back into the sheds again and again and again this year. And my fervent hope, certainly by listening to the farmers in my locality over the last 6 or 8 months, the persecution they have got from the weather and the almost on their own. But to go back, the crisis was obviously, if we had been hoping for an early spring, and every single farmer that was involved in farming was hoping, and every single sector that was involved in farming, be they the co-ops, be they the banks, were all banking on an early spring. It was quite clear from the 10th or the 11th of March that we were in trouble. On the 16th of March, on the 28th, I think, of March, Eamon O'Keefe raised it here in the Dáil on leaders' questions, and again it was dismissed. There was, excuse me 1 minute, Minister. On the 16th of April, Jim Daly, your fellow Corkman, Eamon O'Keefe and myself put on a priority question. We put on a topical issue on the crisis. And you were actually in the Dáil building on that day, but you did not come in to answer the question. And I won't. Sorry, no, you were in the building.
I was in.
Yeah.
I was in.
It was
Clonakilty when this was being debated in the Dáil.
Minister, you must be in two places at one time.
Make your remarks through the chair, please.
A half an hour before that, I met you in the corridor. A half an hour before it, I met you in the corridor, and I said, "What about the weather crisis?" Was the only private conversation I've had with you since we had milk quota prices issue in 2011. I met you a half an hour before I stood up here in the Dáil. Yes.
Because I was speaking in Clonakilty.
Well, if you think that it was more important, because this is a desperate crisis, and I won't read the last 2 or 3 paragraphs that were put on the Dáil record as an adequate response. My colleague, Deputy Derek Cleary, mentioned that the IFA came out the following day saying that there was a grossly inadequate response. At that stage, there were co-ops going all over the country sourcing silage for their farmers. And you came out on the 19th of April, and then there was massive amount of publicity in relation to what was going on and what was being done. Your first acceptance that there was a crisis in this country on the fodder was on the 19th of April. And we have been, in my part of the country, we have been absolutely persecuted. And last Thursday, I got a text message At about 8:10 in the morning, there was a headline in the Farmers' Journal announcing that the fodder crisis was now nationwide. The text message read as follows: breaking news in the Farmers' Journal, there's a fodder crisis in the country. Way back, as Andrew Doyle spoke about, in 1986, when Hurricane Charlie hit this country, there was a former member of the IFA in a rally about farmers, and he said in a rally in Dublin that it wasn't until it hit the crisis hit the Trinity cottages on the Dodder that there was a national crisis. And in my part of the country, the feeling is that right across the echelons, the higher echelons of the agricultural movement, whether it be the media, whether it be the department, whether it be the minister, or whether it be the people that are commentating, it wasn't until the second week of April, when the crisis actually hit the better parts of this country, the better land of this country, that they recognised the persecution that the people of Western Duhallow, right across the Cork-Kerry region, right across West Limerick and Clare, had got since June of 2012. And it is absolutely disgraceful the way those people have been treated for the last 10 months. I have them day in, day out speaking to them. They are crying on the phone to me, not just now, but right through last summer. And I think that at least, you know, there is a huge crisis ahead of us in the second part of 2013 in relation to this issue. And as late as today, they're bringing in fodder to try and build up stock, and they're looking at everything. But these are the best farmers. These are the people that have the best advice. Teagasc have been advising them. They have been going to private advisors. They are top-of-the-range farmers. They have every bit of advice. They know what to do. But they were compounded by a crisis, and nobody listened. Europe, certain farming organisations are talking about the fund in Europe. At least they should have been informed about the desperate crisis that was happening there. Their income have been wiped out. And I'm particularly talking about people that are solely dependent on agriculture, that they don't have second incomes, that their full income is out of the agriculture. Those people will take them years to trade out of it, even at the proposed or even at what is likely to be a bumper year in relation to commodities. We have a serious crisis in the agricultural community, and we have, I think one of the people in the journal last week said that the morale within the farming community was at an all-time low. Well, if it is at an all-time low being commented there, it is at an all-time low in my part of the country with the last 10 months. And I think it is high time that we stop praising all ourselves and we looked at the crisis in it. Now, there's a couple of things that have been bandied about.
There's 2 minutes left, Deputy.
There are a couple of issues that have been bandied about, and the line in relation to the fall in cattle numbers is because we have an increased herd. The last time there was a fodder crisis in this country was 1998, 1999, and there was 10% less cattle in the country today than there was then. And we were able to get through that year. There was a huge crisis in relation to it, but there was enough fodder on the island to be able to distribute to farmers. And there was a crisis in it. But it was clear to all concerned. And previous speakers mentioned that there should be an audit in relation to the fodder that's available, or the fodder that's on farms. Last September, I was saying that we should have an audit instead of farm inspections going on, that the Department of Agriculture should be going out saying how much silage is on this farm, how much silage is on that farm, and have a proper audit. And it would serve the European community far better than any of the cross-compliance regulations that were going on. It would serve the agricultural community because we are dependent on our food industry, not just here, but in Europe. And I think that, you know, there is, for the non-farmer says, oh, the farmer is completely overstocked, that's why he's a fodder crisis. We have 10% less cattle than we had 15 years ago. So there should not have been a fodder crisis. And on the other side of it, there isn't, you know, is it the ground is tilled? That is not the situation. There's less ground tilled. So we should have had it, and we should have known it. And everyone was wishing for an early spring, and if we had an early spring by the first or second week of March, we would have known there was a crisis. It wasn't until the 19th of March that it was acknowledged there was a crisis, And the 23rd of March, the 23rd of April was when the Fodder importation scheme was announced. The 23rd of April from the last week of June 2012.
Thank you.
Well, if you think that that is an adequate response and a swift response, I'm sorry.
5 minutes.